So hopefully you've had a good go at mapping out the concepts that we have learned so far on market structure across the 4 hour time frame from the start of April until around the middle of August in 2021. Of course, on a 4 hour chart. Now, if you haven't already done so and if I haven't convinced you, just kind of giving you one last nudge to give it a go. Even if you just do the swing structure, I really do think you'll get a hell of a lot more out of the video that we're or watching me about to go through all of this market structure if you've at least attempted it yourself. But anyway, I won't rant on about that any more longer. Let's just dive straight into this. So where we left it at the end of March, right, we were playing within this swing high and this swing low, right? So now we're playing within this bearish range. Now, of course, because we obviously have the benefit of hindsight now, we can see that the trend reversed here and we did break structure to the upside. But if we were in the live market, this is literally how I'd be thinking, right? Purely now, of course, just based on looking at one time frame alone and only using the basic concepts that we've looked at, okay? Obviously, as we go throughout the course, right, we're going to learn a lot more and we can bring that into it. But for now, we are just purely thinking in terms of one time frame and only using those basic market structure concepts, okay? Just do kind of want to put that as a disclaimer out there first. So at this point in time, if we were in the live market, I would essentially mark that out as my high and that as my low. And this is the 4 hour range we are playing within, right? After we get our 4 hour break of structure, right, because that's confirmed our lower high, what do we expect after a 4 hour break of structure? We expect a 4 hour pullback. How do we know when that 4 hour pullback may be about to begin? We look for a change of character, so we can look for that minor break of structure to the upside. Okay, what do we get? We get a movement down, we get a minor pullback, right, because it fails to break that candle's low, and then we do get the break of that candle's low. So because we take that low, what does that mean? It means we have a high, which is here, we have a minor high. So then when we get that break of that minor high to the upside, we have a minor break of structure, so we can mark that on. It's quite subtle, but it is there, and this is really where you have to be paying attention to the details and really keeping your eye out on it. So let's zoom right in so we can see this. So then we get that change of character to the upside. We then pull back to form that internal higher high, and then that higher low. And then what do we get? We get another minor break of structure, right? Because we had that minor break there. So now we're with minor break of structure here, right? So we get another minor break of structure there. So in fact, let's mark this on. I know it's very, very pedantic, right? It can seem a bit over the top, but I promise you, as we go throughout the course and we start to build on concepts, especially with multi-time frame analysis, right, you're going to really understand why it's so key to pay attention to all of these little details. Just because it can make a massive difference to your strike rate and the reward to risk ratio that you may achieve in the market. So we've had those two minor breaks of structure to the upside, but what are we expecting the whole time? We are expecting, the 4 hour trend to remain bearish, right? And we are expecting that this lower high should be a strong high because it took out the low. And so in theory, this high should hold and price should not trade any higher. So as price is coming back up towards that high, right, and we're expecting that lower high, how can we potentially know when the pullback may be ending and the next swing run may be starting? We can look for that bearish change of character, right, to the downside. So the internal structure is then back in sync with the overall swing structure. So what do we have? We have a movement up, we have a minor pullback, but then we continue, we have a movement up, and then we have a minor pullback here, because you can see how this candle fails to breach that candle's high. So that's a minor pullback, and then we do take out that high. So again, this kind of minor trend's continuing, but then what happens? Then we take out that minor low. So now we have a minor break of structure, we have that bearish change of character back in line with the swing trend. So now potentially that can be a signal, right, that the pullback is over and we're about to take this low, okay? So that is then a trading idea that we can use to run for a trade down towards this low. But then what happens? Price goes down, it has a minor pullback, and it continues that bearish momentum, right? It takes this low, but because it takes that low, what does it mean? It means that this is a minor high, and price then takes that high. So now we have a bullish change of character, again to the upside, right? We get that minor break of structure, and the internal structure has switched bearish. Now, at this point, we're still playing within the bearish range, right? The swing range is still bearish, so we can still expect a 4 hour lower high to form. However, at this point, when you see that internal change of character again, that's going to again switch bullish, at a minimum, you can potentially expect that this high is going to get run because it should be a weak high, right? Because it's failed to take out that low at a minimum. Now, price can take out that high, right? It could come up, it could come up here, it could then get another change of character, right? Another bearish internal structure change, trend change, and then we could go from here, and then that could be the lower high, right? As long as this high is not breached and we don't get a closure above, okay? But in this case, as you can see, we do actually get that trend change. We do get a closure above, and now we have a confirmed bullish trend change here. Just get that drawing back. There we go. So now we are bullish. Get rid of this orange drawing so we can keep the charts nice and clear. And then let's duplicate this by holding down control and dragging. And then we can draw a nice straight line by holding shift. So now we get that high and that break of structure. Now at this point, where is our swing low? Well, it's not this low here. It's not this low here. It remains to be that low that we already had, right? Because this is the lowest point that led to the break of structure. So what do we expect after a 4-hour break of structure? We expect a 4-hour pullback. How do we know when that 4-hour pullback is about to kick in and the swing run is going to end? Well, we can look for a change of character. So we get the break, we get a minor pullback, but then price continues bullish, right? And then for me, this is just a minor pause, and then we get a break. And now this for me is a bit more of a sustained pullback, right? It's a much larger. So for this for me, it's just a minor pullback. It's just a pause in price action, right? It's just a couple of candles. When you compare it to kind of, you know, the overall price action, that's why this for me, yeah, it's not the biggest of pullbacks, but it's a lot more significant than something like this, okay? So you can see the slight difference there of why I was happy to classify that as swing structure. And for me, this is just minor structure, right? Now this, again, it's not the most glorious of, you know, swings in the world, but for me, you can see, right, big money stepped in. It's a decent enough of a move there for me to count that as a sharp kind of pullback, and that for me is swing structure. So I would then mark that out as my swing high. And now as we start to pull back, price that we are now playing in, right, is between this high and this low all the way down here. So technically price can pull all the way back and still remain bullish, okay? So how do we know that this pullback may be about to kick in? Well, we do get a change of character there because we take the minor low, but we only spike it. But remember, for me personally, I'm happy to view that internal change of character with type 2 mapping. So I'm happy to just see a wick break. Now, some of you may just want that candle closure, and that will be a bit more conservative. And in that case, you never would have viewed that as a minor breaker structure, and that potentially may have saved you, or, you know, helped you to avoid looking for potential short entries to play that deeper pullback. Because as you can see, when we did get that change of character and we got that spike of the low, if you then use that as a potential signal that we were going to get a deeper pullback, right, and you waited for that internal lower high to come in, potentially you got short somewhere around here, price starts to go in your favor, then you just end up, you know, potentially taking a break even or a loss, and you're wondering why. Well, that's just because taking these minor breaks of structure, right, these internal changes of character, especially with just a wick break, it's aggressive, right? So you have to pick and choose your battles of when you are going to do that if you are looking to actually use that, you know, to trade from, right? If you're going to go counter trend there. So of course, as we go through the course, you know, and we learn more concepts and more analytical tools that we can use, we can then build, you know, more confidence and more evidence, rather than purely just looking right at a minor break of structure, at a change of character, in order to take counter trend trades. Okay, so but it's just to kind of have that understanding of, you know, why it can be aggressive and why it can give you false signals. So then we get another 4-hour break of structure to the upside, right? We then form that higher high. So where is our swing low? It's the lowest point that broke the high from where the pullback kicked in. So the pullback kicked in, that's our lowest point, and then we go up, and then we are now playing within this new range here, right? Quite a tight range. Now here, there's not really a change of character to the downside, right? Because we kind of just pull straight back. We don't break anything in the leg to the left. But what happens, this is kind of a bit more messy price action, but I do kind of want to talk about this, okay? Because this is kind of the difference between substructure breaks and minor breaks of structure. So this is our swing high, this is our swing low. We start to pull back, right? Then we form that internal lower high, right? That's substructure low, and then that's substructure high. Now we come down and we try to form that, you know, that internal lower low, but we fail to, and then we break this high to the upside. But that high there, that is just a substructure high. So that means we only have a substructure break, okay? So in this case, that does end up essentially being a change of character in a way, because then we get that internal pullback again, and then we end up actually getting that swing structure break. So let's just kind of go over that. So remember that kind of what we looked at in the previous video in the theory is that you'll get a swing movement up, right? and then you'll get that substructure pullback, right? So these are all substructure breaks here, right? Substructure low gets broken, it's a substructure break. Again, another substructure break. And let's say we have one more, that's a substructure break. But then when we break up to the upside, right, that is a minor break of structure as we then break this leg of price action that forms. Okay, so then that gives us a nice change of character, and then we can potentially look to take out that swing high. Now, what happened in this case is what I'm going to draw now, right? I'm going to draw this section of price action here. Is we had our swing movement up, then we had that substructure pullback, right? Now, let me draw this again. We had the movement up, and then we had that pullback. We had that little movement up here, right? This section of price action here. Now, price came down, and it tried to take out that substructure low, but then it failed, and then it took out this high. But this is just a substructure high, right? It's not really significant at all. It didn't really achieve anything. So although that is kind of a, it's somewhat of a bullish signal because price is, taking out a high to form a higher high, but it's not the greatest, right? It's not that strong. And in this case, price does come down and then it does go. So in this case, it works out. But the reason why substructure is kind of the weakest and the most irrelevant and not really the best to be kind of using for trade ideas is because, when price comes back down here, if you see that as the high low and the change of character is ready to buy, in this case, yes, right? This bit here, it does work out. But a lot of the times what can happen is that was the movement down. This was just a little bit of a complex pullback to then continue and actually get that true substructure break. And then we get a little bit of complex pullback and then we come down and then finally we get the minor break of structure and then we're ready to go, okay? So substructure can get a little bit complex sometimes, but I kind of just wanted to talk through that about how the market's not perfect and sometimes those kind of weak signals can end up being profitable ones. But as long as you're trading with the overall swing trend, generally you're not going to have too many headaches. So yeah, again, I can appreciate at this stage the difference between substructure and minor breaks of structure, kind of when we're playing within the range, can get very confusing at times. So if you are ever confused, don't worry about the classification of SBOS and MBOS too much, right? Don't stress about it. Just delete sort of any internal structure you may have drawn if you're confused and just go back to where is my swing high, where is my swing low, okay, and now know the trend that I'm working within, and it just clears it all up, and now you know that ideally you want to be looking for longs, okay, until proven otherwise, until that low is taken, and that way you can't go too wrong. So anyway, let's draw on our swing structure break, which we then get here, right? So where is our swing low at that point? Well, it's the lowest point that took out the high, which will be this low here, and then we continue up. So what do we expect after a 4-hour break of structure? We expect a 4-hour pullback. How do we know when that 4-hour pullback is going to kick in? Well, we look for a change of character, right? So this one's a little bit more subtle, but we have the movement up. You see how all of these candles break the prior candle's high, so they're all part of the up move. Then we have a minor pullback, right? And then we continue up. And then this candle here, right, we get an inside bar because it fails to take out the previous candle's high. So for me, that is a minor pullback. Then we do take out that high, right? So then that would be a low, and then price comes down and we do get a change of character in here, which is that signal that weakness has come in and potentially we're going to get that deeper pullback, but then also spike that minor low there as well. But it is short-lived, okay? And this is kind of why, minor breaks of structure like that and changes of character are, they're the first initial sign we may be getting a deeper pullback, but when you're fighting the trend, right, it can give you a few false signals, or, it can be very, very short-lived and the overall impulsive trend will take over. So again, we had that minor movement up, that minor high there. So we had a minor break of the low there. It's that initial change of character. Price comes down, it comes back up, it forms a minor high, then it forms that low, right? But then it takes that high, so then we get another bullish change of character to the upside, giving us that sign that the pullback may be over, and then we come up, we do spike the low, but we fail to close above it, and then we get our next 4-hour break of structure to the upside, okay? So it's not the most beautiful bit of price action in the world, but it is just good to understand what's going on. So it's kind of where the pullback started, so you can mark it there, or you can mark it from the high. It's kind of up to you at that stage. I probably would mark it from the highest point. It just cleans it up a little bit there. Now, where is our swing low? It's the lowest point before that high was broken, which in this case was clearly that low there. And then we get the next swing leg up. So for me, that's just a very, very minor pullback. So that's not swing structure. Then we get that movement up. What do we expect after a 4-hour break of structure? We expect the pullback. How do we know when the pullback is going to kick in? When we get a minor break of structure, when we get that change of character. So just going to draw that on. So we get a nice minor break of structure there to the downside. Now at this point, right, even though we know we are bullish and that is our swing high, right, we can look potentially for counter trend shorts if we wish to be aggressive and do so. So we get that change of character to the downside, price then pulls back up, and then you can look for a short here. There is a supply zone here, but of course we'll get into that later. And then you can look for this movement here. Now, obviously it's short-lived. We failed to breach that low, and then we continue the overall bullish trend. So you may be thinking, you know, is it really ever worth kind of taking these counter trend shorts? Well, kind of what you have to start thinking about is if we just measure the size of this bearish move, right, and it's only pretty much 1 or 2 candles, but that movement there is about 75 pips. Now again, we're going to get into this in a lot more detail in the future lessons, but when we start to use multi-time frame analysis and we start to drill down into our entries, you're essentially going to be learning, right, how to enter with 5, 4, 3, and even 2 pip stops, and sometimes even lower. For some of you might want to do that. So if you imagine, you know, let's just be conservative, and let's say a 5 pip stop, right, and you make a 75 pip move, right, at its peak, right, you do the maths on that. My mental maths is not my strongest, but I believe that's about 13, 14 R with a 5 pip stop, right? That's an insane return just for literally a quick counter trend play in the space of, you know, 4 to 8 hours, right? So that's kind of why we're being so pedantic about structure here on just one time frame and looking at every little break. And you know, using that to our advantage. Okay, now, of course this applies to every single time frame. You don't have to be, you know, using this to then go and look for those day trading entries, right? You could be doing this on the monthly chart or even the quarterly chart, and then you'd be, you know, looking at daily pullbacks. Anyway, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to talk about market structure, but it's just kind of just to if some of you are, you know, maybe thinking like, why are we looking at all these tiny little breaks on one time frame? But that is the reason why. So that's why we're going to spend a lot of time just getting very, very comfortable with this and really understanding, you know, looking for those internal changes of character, looking for those minor and substructured breaks, understanding where they are occurring, right, within the swing, so on and so forth. So yeah, there was a bit of an opportunity there, but yeah, then we eventually end up causing that break of structure. But, you know, where was there another potential sign that this wasn't really going to work out? Well, in order for price to pull back up to form that internal lower high, what did it have to do? It had to break minor structure to the upside. So we kind of got that bullish switch again, and that's why then we pull back down. We had a grab on liquidity below that low. Again, another concept we'll talk about later, and then that fueled the move to the upside. And then we had another break of structure. So then that becomes our 4-hour high, right? We form that higher high, and then we pull back. So I'll try and go a little bit quicker now. So hopefully you guys are kind of picking up how we are viewing the market. So this would be our high. There we go. Now where is our low? It's the lowest point that took out the high. So not this one, but this one here, of course. That one's pretty easy to spot. And then we get our pullback. So let's see. We get that minor high, minor low. We don't quite breach that high, and then we breach it here, right? And then we're bullish, and then we get that high there. So let's mark out our new high. Now this break is a little bit more interesting because we actually do get a break of structure to the downside, right? And now the 4-hour finally switches bearish. All right, so that is our swing high. That's the highest point that then took out the low, and then that for me, it's a decent enough of a pullback. Don't know why I didn't get the right tool there. There we go. Right, that's a decent enough of a swing pullback, and then we take out that low. So I personally would be marking that out as a swing structure there. So then we have our high, and then we break the low, but we see how we're kind of just retracing straight away. So that's not really a great sign that we're going to be continuing that trend, right? The fact that buyers have stepped in as soon as we've broken that low. So, you know, potentially you can also use that as a warning sign that price may be about to reverse. So for me, we do get a bit of a pullback there. You could potentially classify that as swing structure. For me personally, I'm not. I kind of see this as a bit of a pause and one move down. So that's my one swing leg in price. So for me, this here is just a minor break of structure, right? Because we took that minor low, which means that this is a minor high, and then we get that minor break of structure there to the upside. So let's just draw it on. All right. Okay, and then we get the 4-hour switching bullish again. So that bearish trend was very, very short-lived, but you can see how there was a couple of warning signs that potentially that was going to happen. And now we are playing within quite a large swing range up here, right? So where was our swing low? It was the lowest point that took out that high. Now at this point, right, we've got quite a big range to play with. That would be our high, that would be our low. Our price can pull all the way back down here, right? And it's still bullish until that low is taken out. So what do we expect after a 4-hour break of structure? We expect a 4-hour pullback. How do we know the pullback is going to kick in? We look for a change of character. Now in this case, we don't get a minor break of structure because we don't break anything in this leg here. But what do we get? We get a substructure break, right? This is a sub sub low here, right? Because we get the pullback, we failed to make that high, and then we break that low. So that's just a substructure break. So potentially, you could see that as a lower high you may want to get involved in. But remember, substructure break is a lot less confluent. So you may want to be looking at other concepts that we're going to learn later to add more evidence that potentially that this is a good counter trend short to take. But just understand that is a substructure low. So then we get a double substructure break there, right? That's the second one. And then I guess we get another little pullback there, and we get another one to the downside. Now, what's another indication that this actually just kind of notice interest? We don't really breach, because that would be where the minor low is for me. So we kind of pull back with substructure that whole time, right? We don't really breach that low, and then what do we get? We then get the minor break. We get the minor high taken. We get that minor break of structure to the upside, that emboss, right? It's a little bit messy to see, but essentially how that would have looked when it formed. That was the high that then took the low. Then that high got taken. Price pulled back in to form that higher low. And then we're off again. We get another minor break of structure. So that's 2 minor breaks of structure to the upside now. And now we're heavily bullish. And we finally take that swing high to form a higher high. Right. So that would be our higher high there. Let me actually draw on the break of structure. Then when we take that high. So you can see how a few times it tried to break up high here, but we failed to get that candle closure above. So you need to make sure you're always waiting for the candle closure before you start trying to because sometimes when you're in a live market, you could see this candle forming, and at one point in time, it's going to look like it's closed above. But you can't suddenly just go, we've broken bullish now, and looking saying that this is the 4-hour low. You must wait for the candle closure on whatever time frame you're looking at before you even thinking about adjusting your structure and defining where your new swing trend is. Okay, that's really, really important, because what this essentially is, it's just a liquidity grab to fuel the move to the downside. But again, getting ahead of myself, we'll discuss this in much more depth in later lessons. So yeah, I've drawn on the new swing high. This is quite clearly our swing low, right? The lowest point that took out that high. Now, what do we expect after a 4-hour break of structure? We expect a pullback. How do we know when the pullback's going to kick in? We look for a change of character, right? That's our minor low, because it took the high and then the low got taken. So now we have a change of character. We pull back up to form that lower high, right? That internal lower high, because we never take out the swing high. So this can potentially be a good counter trend swing opportunity to look to push down to a minimum target, that next internal low. We then try to break lower, but we don't. We break up to the upside. We get that minor break of structure there, and then we get the true swing break of structure, and then we form the higher high, right? So you can see kind of how that minor and substructure pairs together, right? I hope this is really, really starting to kind of sink in now, and you can see how we put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, right? So we got that minor break of structure to the downside, bit of a counter trend opportunity, but it was short-lived, and then the bullish trend continued. All right, so then we get that swing higher high up here. So where is our swing low? Well, it's the lowest point that took out that high. So it's not this point here, but it's this point here, right? So we are bullish, right, until we take out this low. But what ends up happening, we do actually take out this low, and we do switch bearish, right? Because we then get a candle closure below this low. Now, could we have anticipated that pullback or that reversal happening? Well, let's see. So price moves up. Now that would be my minor low, because that's a minor pullback, and then all of those candles continue to break the prior candle's high, so that means it's all part of the up move. Now we get a pullback here, it tries to take out the minor high, but it fails to do so, and then price comes down and takes out this low here. So at that point, that for me is just a substructure break. Let me zoom right in so you guys can see, right? This here is just a substructure low, it's just a substructure break. It's not until we get the break of that low in the prior leg, right, that minor low, that's when we get the emboss. This is just an S-boss, okay? So you may want to mark both of those out separately. Here, I'm just going to mark the emboss for now. All right, just to kind of save some time and keep the charts nice and clear as well. So we get that minor break of structure. So at that point, of course, we don't know that the trend is going to reverse until we get that closure down here. But that's your first real solid sign that we're going to get, that pullback. Of course, we've pulled back quite deep anyway at that point, and the substructure break there was also an indication. But anyway, we get that bearish trend change there, so then that becomes our new swing low, all right, and this is our swing high. Now at this point, we are bearish, right? This is the new range we are playing in. The minute we get that break below, for me, personally, that is confirmed bearish. And now what I'm expecting a pullback to kick in. How do we know when the pullback's started? When we get that minor break of structure to the upside, which is what happens here. How do we know when that pullback's going to end? And we're going to get that lower high. We wait for a minor break of structure to the downside, right? We wait for that change of character. Well, what happens is we get a minor pullback, we get a movement up, right? We get that minor pullback, we take the high, and then what happens? We take that minor low, right? As soon as we get that break below there, that is now your first real solid sign that the lower high may be in place. And now we can start using that as a real solid trade idea to look for shorts, to at a minimum run this low, right? Run this weak low with the potential, right? We could be holding much longer for the start of a new bearish trend. So hopefully this is really starting to sink in now, right? We know how to map our, true swing points, but then it's using the minor breaks of structure and, potentially substructure breaks as well if you want to be a bit more aggressive to show us when those swing runs are ending, right? When the pullback has officially started. And then again, when the pullback started here, we get that minor breaker structure to the upside, right? We want to short because we know we're bearish. We're expecting this strong lower high to hold, right? We're expecting to target this weak low because it hasn't taken out the high. How do we know when the lower high has potentially formed? Well, we can use that change of character to wait for the internal price action to switch bearish again, which is in line with our new overall bearish swing trend, right? So now everything should be in sync, right? Now it's really high probability to start looking to short all of these lower highs, right? To then target this weak low at the bare minimum, okay? Now, one last point I want to kind of make about this as well up here is that, you can be more aggressive and you could say you could see that substructure break to the downside and you could start looking for shorts this whole time and looking for this move here. Maybe you want to be a little bit more conservative and you want to wait for a minor breaker structure, right? And you look for these little pullbacks and then you could be looking for that short there, right? And you could just be looking for a quick move to this weak low, or you could be anticipating this long-term bearish trend change, right? And you want to get really early and potentially you're trying to get in all of this move, right? Which is quite aggressive. So that's one way of trading, one sort of type of personality. Now you may want to be a lot more conservative and you may only want to trade with the trend, right? With the swing trend. And now look what happens. If you're really patient, right? This whole time you just wait for this breaker structure to the downside before you even start to think about shorts. Now you don't just jump in shorts down here, right? And sell at a really poor area of value, right? Really poorly priced level. No, you're patient. You wait for that pullback to kick in, right? You look for that minor breaker structure to the upside, that change of character. And now what do? You don't just start selling as soon as we're kind of, near the high. You wait for confirmation because although we've had a bearish trend change, there's no guarantee, right, that, we're going to stay bearish for a while. Price could easily just come down here and then continue up, right? Just because we've had a break of structure, it doesn't mean that we have to continue bearish for a while, right? It's all probabilities. So what can we do for even more confirmation? We just wait for that change of character again, that internal structure to switch bearish, which is when we take that low there. And now you've stacked so much confluence in your favor. You've been so patient, right, for a number of days now. And look what happens. You can pretty much sell around here, right? Pretty much at the same levels where you could have potentially taken loads of losses, right? When you're only using substructure breaks or minor breaks of structure and you're trying to get in really early compared to being really patient, and you can still pretty much get in at the same level, okay? And the reason why I say that is because although the substructure break and this minor break of structure does in this case work out and it did anticipate that long-term trend change, what happens if since the start of April, every time you saw a bearish minor break of structure or a bearish substructure break, that you kept taking shorts and trying to swing for the fences expecting this, what happens? And this is happening the whole time to other people, right? They're getting in short, they're getting smashed. 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 They're getting short, okay, maybe they make a bit of money, or maybe they try and get greedy. They think that the long-term trade's kicking in now, but then what happens? They get smashed or they take a break even. Again, maybe a bit of money, maybe not, break even, or they get smashed, and it keeps going. Okay, now eventually they got it in, they call the top of the market, and they can post on Instagram, look really cool to kind of all their their random stranger mates, get some nice clout, because they called the top in this potential move. But you didn't see how many times they got smashed or how many losses they took, or how many grey hairs that they got this whole time trying to fight the overall predominant trend. Okay, so don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to put you off trading counter trend or trading those pullbacks, because I'm going to show you how you do it safely and with tons and tons of confidence, so that you stack the probability in your favor. But not only that, you're also going to understand to manage your expectations of how far that counter trend move is going to go, how far that pullback is likely going to go. And you're also then going to be able to take warning signs from the market when it is communicating to you that that pullback is now over. So let's say you took a really nice short here, right? And let's say you're running really nice profits, right? Yes, potentially we could come much lower, all the way down towards this low, right? But you're not going to be greedy because you're a professional trader. You're going to not be attached to the outcome of the trade that you want, right? Because you might want the profit that you could get if price comes down here, right? But you're not going to do that. You're going to keep neutral and you're going to look at what the market is telling you. And if you see that bullish change of character to the upside, you're going to use that as information, right? That potentially the pullback is over, and then you will incorporate that into your management decision, right? Whether that means that you are taking full profits and closing the trade, whether that means you're going to partial out some of your profits, maybe that means you're going to look for a hedge position and then take a long trade, right? These are more advanced concepts that we'll get into later in the course, but I just want you thinking about now that why all of this is so important, why market structure is king, and why we are spending so much time going through this, candle by candle, and really making sure you know this, because if you get this right first, that's why everything else falls in line, everything else becomes so much easier. And I promise you, if you don't nail this down first and you blast through all the videos, you do all the concepts, you think you kind of roughly get it, I promise you 2, 3, maybe in 6 months time, I guarantee you'll be coming back to this and you'll be watching this and go, right, okay, I'm going to take everything step by step again, and I'm going to take it all apart, right? Just like we looked at the Olympic lifter, right? We're just going to practice the deadlift, right? And we're going to nail that first, because if you haven't got the deadlift, you're never going to be able to do the rest of the clean and jerk, right? You might be able to do those separate parts on their own, right? You may be able to do the jerk, you might be able to do the front squat, you might be able to do the clean, right? But you're never going to be able to do a very heavy clean and jerk in one go if you can't deadlift. So this is kind of my way of giving you an analogy of what kind of market structure is. It's the base to everything. But anyway, let's keep going. I think this is really, really useful to do. So, as I was saying, we had that 4-hour lower high, right? We had the changes of character to the downside, and then we took out the week low. So I am now going to try and go a little bit quicker. So I'm not going to go through every little bit of internal structure, but I kind of just want to talk through the swing points just so you can sync it up with kind of what you have done on your charts. Okay, so when we took out that low, where was the highest point? It was this point up here. So we are then playing within that high and this low here, right? And this is, I can't help but go through this because I just think it's so useful, right? What do we expect after a 4-hour break of structure? We expect a pullback. How do we know when the pullback is going to start? We see a change of character, right? There's your minor high, which takes out the low. Then we get that change of character. We get that minor break of structure to the upside, right? So then we can potentially look to play those counter trend longs, but we know that this high should hold, right? And this low should be run because it's a weak low because it didn't take out the high. So when we're looking to catch the pro trend shorts and we want to know where the lower high is, what can we do? Well, we just wait for a change of character back to the downside, right? So we're bullish this whole time with the internal structure. We then take the high, so this means that this is a low, right? And then what happens? Price comes down, it takes the low, which means the internal structure has now changed bearish again, right? We get that change of character to the downside as we break that minor low, wait for the pullback, we get in short, and we make a shit ton of money targeting that weak low at a minimum, right? Again, I'm not trying to hype you up, but this is literally just what we're doing day in, day out. Every time I hop on the charts, it's the first thing I'm looking at is structure. And I speak to myself like a kid, like, where are we in structure? Where is my high? Where is my low? Am I expecting a pullback, right? Has the pullback, have we got that minor break of structure to show me that the pullback is starting? Have we now got that change of character again to show me the pullback is over? Where is my weak high? Where's my weak low? That's where I'm going to target, right? Same thing every single time. And it's the first thing I'm looking at. Okay. So we get the break of the low. Here's our lower low here, right? Here's our high up here. Now we get the pullback. Again, this one, we don't get a minor break of structure to the upside, right? Because it's quite a clean push. If we took this high up here, right, if price came all the way up, that would be a minor break of structure, okay? But again, we would not be bullish unless we took out that high there. But what do we get? We get substructure breaks because we get a bit of a pullback. That's a substructure break. That's a substructure break there. But then what happens is we then take the low. That's that first change of character, that first bearish low. So that is a minor break of structure because it essentially breaks this leg of structure that then formed. So that's a minor break of structure to the downside. Pull back in, right, into a nice supply zone. Again, we'll get into that. And boom, target the weak low. And then you end up, being in a huge trade there if you ideally held on to some of the volume on your trade. And then we get a massive swing leg down. So let me just draw that across. Okay, so yeah, hopefully this is making a hell of a lot more sense now. So big swing leg down. Now for me, this is just kind of a minor pause in price action, a minor pullback. When you kind of consider it, it's all relative to kind of the current price action we are seeing, right? This really for me is the true swing leg down, and this is all just part of the complex pullback. But What do we expect after a 4 hour break of structure? We expect the 4 hour pullback. But this is a really good example, right, of what do we have before. As soon as we broke that 4 hour low, we got to pull back straight away. Now, as soon as you see that break of structure in a live market, you can't just suddenly think in your head that, right, price has to pull back now because we've had the break of structure. Because look, how big is this movement? You know, nearly 300 pips, right, in the space of what, 3 days? So that's 100 pips a day. On Eurodollar, that's a big volatile move, right? When you compare it to the other price action. So the minute you see that 4 hour break of structure to the downside, if you're trying to buy, you know, this whole time, you know, looking for those longs, you're gonna get smashed, right? Don't do that. It's not intelligent trading. So at a bare minimum, with only the concepts that we've learned so far, what do? We're very, very patient, and we just wait for that change of character if we are to start to look for those longs, or if we are to start to manage our trade and expect that 4 hour pullback to kick in, right? So what do we have? We have the minor low, pull back to form the minor high. We then take that low, which means that this is a minor high. So then we get that minor break of structure to the upside. So actually, let's mark this on, right? Now, again, if you view this as swing structure, that's absolutely fine, but just be very, very consistent and make sure you continue to do that. So we take that minor break of structure. So because we've had a minor break of structure, this also means this is all minor structure now as well. So we take that high. Now here, this is interesting, right? Because what's happening when you actually look at price action? So when we have that first minor break of structure, you know, we get a decent close above and we get another candle that goes, but then we pull back. But then what happens when we take out this high? Well, we barely close above it with this candle, and then the next candle pretty much just wicks it and retraces straight away. So you can see kind of, you know, with this heavy momentum, that price is really struggling to go higher. Every time we break an internal high, sellers are stepping back in. So then when we try and take this high again, what happens? We don't even close above this. We literally just wick it, grab the liquidity, and then we come back down. So then what happens? We get that change of character again, right, to the downside. So this is where you can either kind of take the lowest point of that minor high, or you can be a little bit more aggressive, right? It's going to depend on how you want to do things, right? And you can look at that as your first real kind of minor low. Now, why is that a minor low? Because what we have is an inside bar. So price comes down, it moves up, it pulls down here. You see that? Because it failed to take out the previous candle's high. And now all of these candles break the previous candle's high. So that's all part of the internal up move. So that's why you can consider that as an internal move, or you may want to take that low there, right? It's up to you. Obviously, the slightly higher one is a bit more aggressive. So essentially, we get that change of character to the downside. And now what can we expect? We can expect that the 4 hour lower high is in place. And then we can expect that price to run the week 4 hour low. So then we take out this low down here. And then let me drag that across there. Okay, so we don't get that confirmed lower low until this candle closure here at 6 a.m. London time on the 1st of July, which then means that this is now our swing high. Now we have a little bit of a pullback here. It's quite a big 4 hour candle, but it kind of retraces straight away. So for me, I'm not really going to classify that as, you know, major swing structure. It's more just minor, but then we get a bit more of a sustained pullback. So for me, that would be our swing low. All right. Now, I am not going to go through every single little bit. I know I keep saying that, but I do kind of want to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to try and just stick to the sort of just marking out the major swing structure here, and then sort of any key talking points that arise, right? So we get that pullback, we break the low. Again, what do we get? Minor break of structure to show prices pulling back. Then we come up, right? And then we come down and we take the low again. So then this becomes our next break of structure. Right, so you can see those strong lower highs I've held the whole time. Price has never ever traded above them, and that's why this trend can go on longer than you think. And it's just easier, right? I promise you, it's easier to just run with the blind assumption that the trend, you know, is going to continue, right? Okay, so where are we? Lost my train of thought there. So we take the low here, so we retrace back. Where's the highest point that took the low? That is our low there, right? And then we get the pullback. And then let's see, when do we take this low? So remember, with breaks of structure, to form that lower low, I need to see a candle closure. So it tries multiple times. We don't get that confirmed until this candle here. So literally, if I draw it to this candle here, right, at this point in the market, before this candle forms, right, at this point in the market, you do not know that this is the lower high, right, until we get this candle closure here. So you have to be really, really patient, because if you imagine, that's going to look like a big bearish candle at some point, and you're going to really be convinced that we have broken lower and that potentially we are now, you know, within this range, right? But we're not until we get that closure there. So it's really, really important, okay, that you make sure you wait for candle closures. But we do eventually get that. That is our low. We then do have a bit of a decent pullback, and then we are playing within this high here and this low here. but we fail to ever close below that low, and we do eventually get a 4-hour trend change as we take out this swing high here. All right, now there were a lot of warning signs, right, that was about, potentially about to occur. A lot of them being, you can see, right, every time price tries to take out the low, look at the buyer stepping in, right? It tries to close down, buyer step in, tries to close down, buyer step in, right? We keep getting minor breaks of structure to the upside. Again, we try to come down with a lot of momentum, right? A lot of momentum coming in, stop dead, right, in its path. Buyers are defending these lows, okay? And then what do we get? We start to get these substructure breaks to the upside, right? And then we get another one, right? And then we get another one. You can see then we're starting to form these in a series of internal higher lows, right? And it's starting to show you that the bulls are potentially taking control. But of course, we don't have that confirmed until we get that higher high there. So then the 4-hour did switch bullish, but of course we can now see that that did not last very long. Okay, but what do we expect after a 4-hour breaker structure to the upside? We expect a 4-hour pullback. How do we know that that swing run may be finishing and the pullback may be starting? We get a change of character. We get that minor breaker structure to the downside, right? We take out this minor low here. Why is that a minor low? Well, it's a minor low because it took out the high, right? So you need to see price take the high. That gives you your low, and then when price takes the low, that is your sign of weakness. Then what happens? Price ranges for a bit, but essentially it forms that internal lower high, and we take the low again. So what do we get? We get another minor breaker structure to the downside, right? We close below, we come back up, and then we get another minor breaker structure to the downside again, right? We get one here, and then we get another one. Now, at this point, right, we still have to assume that the 4-hour is going to stay bullish, but these counter trend shorts are still becoming high probability because you can see the weakness stepping in, right? We keep breaking minor lows to the downside with a lot of momentum, right? So it's not to know that we would definitely know that we're about to reverse, but it just means that potentially you can hold your shorts, right? So if you got in short, potentially when you first saw that initial change of character and you traded that internal lower high here, as long as you keep seeing, that those minor breaks of structure to the downside and price doesn't break up to the upside, that it doesn't give a bullish change of character, you can hold on to that short. And look, you would have ended up being in a huge trade, and you would have ended up being in a reversal trade without even knowing price was going to reverse, right? So that's just sometimes the power of when you are trading those counter trend short positions, right, at really good price, because even if you just push it back down towards the low, right, as long as we never switch bullish again on the internal structure, you can end up being in a huge trade. So then we take the low, that remains as our high, right, because that was the highest point before the low broke. Now for me, again, this is just a minor pullback. This is all one part of the swing trend, and then we get a bit more of a pullback. So we're almost there, guys. This becomes our swing low, okay? Now, what do we expect after a 4-hour breaker structure? We expect a 4-hour pullback. So when can we expect that? When we get a change of character, right? So we get a minor pullback, we take the low, which means that we have a high here, right? Then we take the high, we get our change of character. We get a pullback, we can look for those counter trend longs, and then we can trade that up. Okay, but remember, it's just a counter trend 4-hour pullback because now we expect the 4-hour to stay bearish. Now, this is quite a clean push, so there's nothing in the leg there to give us any price action. All we get is a substructure break there. Right, that's a substructure break there, but we don't get the minor breaker structure until we come down and take this low here, right? And then we try to get that breaker structure. We don't initially get it, but then we do, and we finally get that swing low down here, right? And now we are within this new bearish swing range here. So yeah, that brings it to the end. Hopefully you're all still awake. I appreciate that was long, right? And now some of you who are a bit more advanced may have found this a little bit pedantic and a little bit over the top. I don't want to go on another rant now about just how important this is. I think I have really, really driven that point home. But yeah, for those of you who did have a go at this and map it before, don't worry if you mapped it different to me, right? For a few reasons. One, it doesn't matter. It's all about practice. Just hopefully listen to my thought process, the way that I viewed structure, see if that makes sense to you, see if that resonates with you. But remember, everyone's going to view the market slightly differently. So just the main point I would always make is there is no true right or wrong way of doing things, okay? If anyone tells you there is, just ignore them. But what I would say, and this will apply to anything in trading, is just be consistent. If you do want one thing one way, always do it that way, right? Bring a method to the madness. Be consistent, and that will give you your highest probability of getting consistent results, right? Because as long as you are consistent in the way that you do things and the way you analyze things, right, then what happens is you can collect data based on how you do your stuff in the market. And if you collect data, right, and it proves to be profitable, what has that done? It means the way that you have done things, right, it could be the complete backwards way of what I've just shown you. But as long as you always do it that backwards way and you collect data to prove that it works, congratulations, you have just found your edge in the market. Now please go and do that and repeat that consistently, and you will make money, right? That is all we're trying to do. We're just trying to, make sense of it all, be consistent with what we do, and apply it again and again and again, right? Be the casino, apply your edge, and let it play out. Okay, rant over. Have a go at this. Go back over what I've done, or at least have a go at this if you haven't done it already. And then what I would do is go back even further, right? Go and look at old price action. Now, if you want to be even a bit more advanced, what you can do is use something called bar replay. Now, if you have your free account on TradingView only, I do believe that this feature will not work. I think you need to have at least the minimum subscription payment, so the cheapest tier payment, I believe. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. But if you do have it, I would highly recommend you do use this. TradingView, it's a tool of our business. Invest in yourself, invest in your business, take this seriously. I really would recommend it. But anyway, bar replay, essentially what it allows you to do is kind of simulate sort of the backtesting environment, so you can take it back to wherever, right? Obviously, you can do it with the drawings on. That can also be useful, but also practice without your drawings, right? Now you can press play and it will play like that. Or what I would recommend is if you hold shift and then press the right arrow on your keyboard, it will bring it forward bar by bar. So then what you can do is you can practice simulating in the live market, where bar by bar you will draw on your highs and your lows, and then you'll try and anticipate, when you see your minor breaks of structure, you can go, okay, the pullback's kicking in, and then you can start to visualize it. Because obviously it's a lot easier in hindsight when you're just going through like this, but when you start to practice it a little bit more, you'll see where those false signals are, and where you get where the false signals are, but then also when they do work out, right? And that's how you're really going to get just so experienced with this, man. I just can't drive this home enough. But anyway, I'm going to stop it there so this video doesn't go on for 2 or 3 hours. Hopefully you took some value. Practice this. Share your charts in the community. If you want any feedback as well, I'll be more than happy to take a look at them. All right.